to be a church that shuts its doors to special needs families, and therefore do not want to be a school that does that. I want to be a school that welcomes these families in with open arms and with an open mind and an open heart to try to figure out how we can help them flourish. Our vision, our mission is to empower children and their families to flourish in the goodness of the Lord in the church community home. That's every family. The gospel is for every single family. It's for every single home, every single child. We don't get to stipulate which ones get the good education and which ones don't. That's not how the gospel works. And so I want to be a pastor and a leader and a church leader, a school leader, community leader who advocates for families with special needs. And I want to do that in a couple of ways. First of all, I think you need to know my convictions, like why this is so deep to me. And then I think you need to also understand educational experience and expectations, because that's important. When we're talking about this, we can't be naive about what we're addressing, and the reality that when the rubber hits the road, and the children are in our classrooms, we need to make sure that we're prepared to educate them as best we can and care for them as best we can with some of the complexities that they bring. So just so you understand, first of all, my convictions are deeply rooted in uh, three big ideas, I think, in the scriptures. First of all, uh, these children, these folks are made in the image of God. First and foremost, the imago Dei is one of the grounding convictions, truths, theological convictions that I have about humanity. All human beings are made in the image of God, and God created them to display His worth and His value. And so, when you look at this image, just image bearing, um, the value that they bring to this world is rooted in the fact that they are still created in the image of God, despite any kind of deformities or cognitive delays or internal issues. That's irrelevant. The imago Dei gives them the dignity and the right to life, and so that's a big Genesis 1:26-27 is a big deal to me, and so they sit there. Second of all, they are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139. There's no mess up here. Now we live in a Genesis 3 world, so we need to understand that part of the fall, the womb was affected. I mean, the pain that Eve would have in childbearing, and that every woman would have, was not confined to just the labor, the physical labor pains. The womb would experience all kinds of different pain. Part of that pain, obviously, being stillborn births, and other parts of that being um, special needs children. It doesn't make them any less valuable. It doesn't make them any less dignified or worth. It just reminds us that we do live in a Genesis 3 world. We live in a world where life is is brief, and life is also made up of these different complex issues that really shouldn't be there pre fall. That when Adam and Eve were made before the fall, that things were perfect, and after the fall, sin has affected everything, and even the fact that we age, the fact that we go from completely healthy human beings to old, to where our organs shut down and everything. All that's part of the breakdown of the body, and sometimes that breakdown happens inside the womb, and it will create issues. I have a cousin right now who just had a baby born with multiple complex issues. This is not something that they were anticipating as they were going into having children, but it's still part of their family, part of their life. And the third thing, it's part of the sovereignty of God. That's the other thing. So it's grounded in the imago Dei, being fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. Secondly, I should say that it's also governed by the sovereignty of God, and we cannot downplay that or put that aside. Psalm 139 also says, I've written your days down in a book. I know every one of them. So every single life on earth is governed by the sovereign hand of God to fulfill the sovereign purpose of God. One of the examples you talk about is, Moses is in Exodus 4, and he's being called by God to go deliver Israel out of Egypt. And one of his arguments towards God is, I don't speak very well. Now, we don't know exactly what that means. We don't know if he was just nervous, or if he just was kind of incompetent, or he could have had a speech impediment. He could have had something going on with his mouth. We're not quite sure. But the reality that God tells Moses is, look, I'm the one who makes you blind. I'm the one who makes you deaf. I'm the one who makes you mute. I'm the one who makes you talk. I'm the one who forms human beings, essentially is what he's saying, for my will and my purpose. And he's reminding Moses that it's within his sovereignty and his care that he can use anybody he wants to deliver his people, because he is the source of power and he's the source of goodness. And so we have to understand that these children and these families are inside the sovereignty of God, and he's working out his purpose within his sovereignty, which goes to John 9, which is my third point, is the glory of God. Because when you read John 9, Jesus' disciples are walking down the street, and they see a blind guy, and they ask this kind of ridiculous question, well, who sinned, this guy or his parents sinned? And Jesus says, well, it wasn't about his parents' sin or his sin, that this guy was blind for the glory of God, to reveal the works of God, to reveal the glory of God. And so Jesus now heals this man and shows the world the power of God, through his son. The big principle, the big idea there for us to take away is that you can't judge a book by its cover. God reveals his glory oftentimes through some of the most weak, or the weakest people. And people with disabilities are meant to display the glory and the works of God. It doesn't mean that they're all going to be healed miraculously like that man was. But the point is, that man served a purpose. He was here on earth to reveal the glory of God. And I take that as children with disabilities are here to reveal the glory of God. And the church is missing glory when their families and their children are not there. When families with disabilities are not part of the community, we're missing a sense of the image of God. We're missing a sense of the wonder and awe of God. We're missing a part of his sovereign care, and we're missing his glory when they're not inside the church and when they're not inside the school. And so with these kind of deep convictions, I say that the church must and do everything it can to reach these families, and that the school, the Litchfield Christian School, must do everything in its power to serve these children and their families, to help them flourish.